What is up, everyone? My name is Victoria Geary, here for another Football Guys short for the upcoming 2022 fantasy season. Thank you so much for tuning in. Last couple of weeks, I've been talking about value players you can draft at each position and redraft their best ball formats, tight ends, running backs, wide receivers, and I will be finishing the trend this week with a couple of value quarterbacks for the 2022 season that I believe will outplay their ADP. Before I get into it, though, make sure you're checking out all of our awesome off-season content over at footballguys.com and our YouTube page, of course, youtube.com/footballguys has all of our shorts coming out daily, along with every awesome full-length show Football Guys has to offer, the Audible, the Dynasty Show, many, many more. Let's get into it here, though, for our final value piece. I will preface this video by saying, I know these guys aren't as sexy as the Josh Allens of the world, #daddy, or Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes, etc. But their prices on draft day are not so sexy. Okay, so these guys I'm about to hit on are quarterbacks that should still be on the board in the later rounds of your draft after you've ideally pieced together and collected a bunch of talent at the running back, wide receiver positions, maybe even tight end at this point. First up is a player that I wrote an article about in March of 2021, saying that he'd be the next late round QB for 2021, just like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Kyler Murray were in the years before him. He was the overall QB1 from weeks 1 to 11 of fantasy season last year. He finished overall at QB6 in points per game. And this dude didn't score less than 22 points for 7 weeks straight to start the season. And everyone who drafted him in those really late rounds of their drafts was on a high. It's me. I'm everyone. Unfortunately, he suffered a grade 1 high ankle sprain in week 12. It only led to him missing 1 game of the season, but it severely hindered his rushing upside for the remainder. I am talking about Jalen Hurts, quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I am a firm Hurts believer in that he will again be of value in drafts this year, because let's face it, we can name so many other stud QBs that fantasy managers will prefer to select for their team before they're selecting a guy like Hurts. Now, Hurts got so much haterade thrown at him prior to the start of last season for many, many reasons, including a low completion percentage, a lack of passing touchdowns, his lack of weapons, a lack of a competent offensive line, you name it. And despite all that, he was still able to improve his completion percentage from 52% in 2020 to 61.3% in 2021. Now, he didn't have the best circumstances in either of those years. He had one capable pass catcher, a pass-catching wide receiver on the roster in Devontae Smith last year. His most talented tight end, Dallas Goedert, wasn't really a big factor until later in the season. And his brand new coaching staff, well, they did their darn best for the first-timers. This year, the front office, they have a lot of draft capital ready to go to build around Hurts to see what it takes to be their franchise quarterback. So we're hoping he starts this year, and they're hoping also that they finally hit on a stud wide receiver in the draft. But that remains to be seen. We know their history. We don't want to hit on that. The good news is, though, we have seen what Hurts is capable of already in fantasy with a not-so-great roster around him. In those last 3 games, when he came back from the ankle injury last year, he had a season-high 66.7% for completion of passes, over 700 yards, and a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And he led the Eagles to a playoff run when the year before they only won 4 games the whole season. Luckily, it was reported back in February, too, that Hurts had surgery on that hurt ankle that gave him problems in that second half of the season. He's expected to make a full recovery by the start of OTAs, which are coming up so soon. I cannot wait. Now, I'll finish this off about Hurts with what I believe to be the most important factor to Hurts being a huge value at quarterback again. Every single season, we continue to see just how valuable rushing quarterbacks are in most redraft and best ball formats. Hurts averaged over 11 rushing attempts and 56 yards per game on the ground, and almost 1 rushing touchdown per game prior to that ankle injury in week 12. So being able to grab a player who has such a high rushing ceiling anywhere from rounds 8 to 10 in your fantasy drafts is chef's kiss, you know? Currently, Fantasy Pros has him ranked as QB 11 overall, and Underdog Fantasy has him coming off of draft boards as the QB 10. I will be riding the Hurts wave again for the 2022 season, and I hope y'all will as well. Now, this next guy, if you're someone who likes to wait until double-digit or really later rounds for your fantasy starting quarterback, then this guy might be perfect for you. Fantasy Pros currently has him ranked as QB 15. Underdog has him coming off of draft boards at QB 17. currently. This quarterback has a brand new shiny wide receiver to pepper with targets, who I'd say is pretty darn good. His team just hired a new offensive-minded head coach in Josh Daniels, who had success in the league as an offensive coordinator with the Patriots. And this quarterback is in the most insanely talented and upgraded division in the entire NFL, in my opinion, the AFC West. Now, I, of course, am talking about Derek Carr, quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's quietly been a pretty underrated starting quarterback for quite some time now. With these offseason changes the Raiders have managed to compile to, he has a really, really good shot to have his best season yet. So Carr has not been a set-it-and-forget-it quarterback over the years. His best fantasy points per game came all the way back in 2016 with 21.6 points per game. His highest passing touchdown total came back in 2015 with 32 total passing touchdowns. And he's only hit 25 passing TDs once in the last 5 seasons. But that shiny new wide receiver I referenced, the Raiders just added, that is Davante Adams. I'm sure you may have heard of him. He is an incredible wide receiver, formerly of the Green Bay Packers. And the addition of Adams will allow Carr to outperform his ADP alone, I'm convinced. In the past 3 years, only one other player has racked up more receiving yards than Davante Adams at just over 3,900 yards total. He's accumulated 34 receiving touchdowns in that same time span, which is second best, and he is number 1 in receiving yards per game at 93 yards per game. Fun fact, too, Davante Adams and Derek Carr played together at Fresno State for 2 years, so it's pretty safe to assume their connection already has an edge in building that needed chemistry for success this season. Most importantly, Davante Adams is a red zone freak, which is good news for Derek Carr. So not only does Derek Carr have one of the best wide receivers in the game now at his disposal, the rest of his pass catchers are pretty darn good too. Tight end Darren Waller has come on as one of the top fantasy tight ends in recent years. He's a favorite target of Derek Carr. Wide receiver Hunter Renfrow, a fantasy waiver wire darling last season, benefited from Waller's absence with some injuries, but he built extremely good chemistry with Carr as the rest of the season went on. And in my opinion, Renfrow is one of the most underrated receivers in the game. The presence of Davante Adams is only going to work to benefit all of these pass catchers at Carr's disposal for this season. And the last thing I'll hit on for Carr, I'm not sure you've been watching, but the AFC West has never been more exciting or talented than it has gotten this past offseason. Between the Broncos adding Russell Wilson at quarterback, the Chargers are still armed with uber-talented Justin Herbert at the quarterback helm, and of course, Chiefs' favorite Patrick Mahomes. There's going to be plenty of shootout potential for Carr to feast. You remember that final game of the season between the Raiders and the Chargers last year? We all wanted to end it in a tie so they could both go to the playoffs. That was entertainment. That was a feast. Shootout. That was amazing. I'm expecting a lot of those this season. You can bank on snagging Carr in the double-digit rounds of your one quarterback fantasy leagues. He should easily outperform his ADP for all those reasons I just listed. I'm so excited to see what he does. So last week I discussed wide receiver 2s that have wide receiver 1 potential. This week I finished the trend on values with some quarterbacks, but make sure y'all are checking out our other great shorts on the YouTube page. Our own Alex Caruso's most recent Football Guys short video, he makes a case for Allen Robinson as a wide receiver 1 this season with the Rams. Make sure you check that out. All of our other videos and fantastic content over at footballguys.com and youtube.com/footballguys. Thank you guys so much for checking out another short. Catch you all next week.